What a fabulous introduction. I was saying backstage that this is the chat I think I'm most excited to moderate because I am so passionate about community, and this industry is booming right now. And we're going to get into that in just a little bit. So if you've never heard about community or roles in community, don't go anywhere. This is the chat that you want to listen to. So I want to start. I know Nicole just gave really great introductions of both of you, but I'd love for both of you to tell us a little more about yourself and what you're working on, and a little more about Commsor. So I'm going to start with Alex.
Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. So excited to talk with you today, Lauren. I guess a little bit more about me. I got my start in the community world back in 2010 as one of the first employees at Reddit. It was a crazy adventure and really solidified my passion for community building. And so, throughout my career, whether I've been doing product development or traditional community management, there's always been that community element to it. And so in my current role now, I'm the Chief Community Officer at Commsor, which is oh boy, I need to actually refine my elevator pitch for what Commsor is, but it's basically a platform that allows you to connect all of your various community management tools into one place so that you have a source of truth about all of your community members. And then we enable you to do stuff with that data and with those members. And my role in particular is focused on the top level strategy and what it looks like to manage all of our different community initiatives, our different programs that we have, and work with the executive team and other team leads to figure out, what community looks like at our company and what our business is up to.
Amazing. I cannot wait to dive more into this. And Noelle, I'd love to hear more from you.
Alex, I'm so glad that you grabbed the elevator pitch portion of events, but my name is Noelle. I'm excited to talk to you guys today. My background is actually my entire career. I kind of draw back to a big career shift that I made. When I left college, my first role was actually being a public high school teacher, and I taught high school music in Queens. And when I figured out that that wasn't for me, as I think a lot of people have had the experience of going into their first career and kind of figuring out that it's not a good fit for them for whatever reason, from like workflow to just like what times of day you like to work or whatever random things it might be. And I actually made the shift into community management and ended up running the community program at Teachable, which is a software company for online course creators. And just within the past less than 6 months, I guess, I started working at Commsor actually to build that education for people in similar shoes as I was in, of wanting to make that career shift into community management. So that's what I do at Commsor.
I love it. So much to unpack here. And I want to start very high level, so at the top here. And as a community professional myself, there seems to be this common misconception that, when we are talking about community, especially within an organization, it's interpreted as social media or social media management, which you and I both know is very much not the case. So I'd love to start by hearing your definition of community, and why is this especially important to businesses today?
Yeah, I guess I can take a stab at this first. There are a lot of ways to describe community, and something that we kind of go back to when we're writing and speaking to people and educating folks is that, like, if you ask 10 different people about what community means to them and their company, you're going to get 10 different answers. But for me, what it ultimately boils down to is a group of people who gather and interact around a particular thing. And that thing could be a company, it could be a product, it could be a hobby, it could be an interest, it could be whatever. But that to me is what is core, is that it is a group of people who are connecting with each other and forming those relationships together, not just that one-way connection, but really a two-way connection.
Yeah, absolutely. We key in also a lot on this idea of, like, just speaking to social media, like this idea of capital C community and lowercase c community. Like, we definitely acknowledge that there's community building in all parts of our lives, whether that's like in a business context or whether that's like us building a group of people that we're engaging with on social media. But when we're talking about this as like a career path, we're very keyed into this idea of like capital C community that has this really strong sense of place and program.
Yeah. Wow. I've actually never heard of capital C community. So you're educating me. This is awesome.
This is why Noelle's the best.
I love it. That makes a lot of sense. And, well, I'll get into this in my next question, but it's still a new and growing field. So I think that's what's the most exciting part about all of this rapid growth. And, especially recently, we've seen such an increased rise in the business case for community throughout the pandemic, especially. Why do you think that is?
I think there are a lot of things that factor into it. And, obviously we are all, maybe not all of us, but most of us are, longing for relationships and hungry for connection with other people. And this is kind of driving folks to want to be part of these communities, and companies are providing the space for these people to connect. And I think companies have really come to understand in the past few years, and especially in the past year, that investing in community for your business, it's not just because it like looks good and is cool and is what everyone else is doing, but really because it actually impacts all of the different teams within your company and, helps. I mean, I could list a million things, but the ones that really jump out to me are, retention, referrals from members that lead to user acquisition. Product teams get to actually build with people so that they build better products. Sales teams can actually, have organic leads without having to do cold outreach. And you're going to have people who are already primed and ready and interested in whatever your product or company is. And like, you can easily crowdsource support where, you're going to have obviously things that get escalated, but community members want to help. They want to be there and help answer people's questions that they can. And like, companies are realizing that it does all of these things and more. And I think that with this turn to online community spaces, like that's why it's happening right now.
Anything you want to add, Noelle?
Yeah, sure. One thing that I think about, like, in addition to everything that Alex said, which is absolutely accurate too, is like traditional marketing would kind of have us overbuild an audience and leverage a very small percentage of it. So like there's this idea of like, maybe I want to build an email list and I'm going to put so much effort into getting every single lead. And then eventually down the line, only like 2% of them are ever going to listen to anything that I have to say, or like ever going to take action based off of what I've reached out. And I think a lot of companies are like realizing people are very fatigued to these broadcast channels. And they're like, I'm not even going to bother with that, like 10,000 people. I'm just going to try to focus on the 2% who want to have a relationship with me. And I'm only going to build a community with that smaller group. So I think we're seeing a bit of a shift away from this like massive kind of broadcast marketing.
I totally agree with you there, especially as someone who works heavily in email marketing. It's a beast, to say the least. But, I think this is a really good kind of surface intro to this next question, which is, what does a community manager do? And what does a typical career path look like? And I know I've actually been, and I can't believe I wrote community manager in my notes here on this question, but I've been slammed for saying community manager and not community professional, because it's not just community managers. There are so many different facets of this industry that you can come into and make your mark on. So talk to me a little bit about like this as a career path.
I'll be honest and say it's kind of all over the place still. And I think that kind of comes with the territory of something that has been around for a while, but never been truly appreciated or understood. And now that it has so much focus, there's a lot of stuff that's happening and there isn't a cohesive understanding of like what that something is. And so we're trying to help fix that with a bunch of other wonderful people who are community professionals. But I think the most standard one that you will still come across is community manager. Community operations seems to be like on the rise, which is awesome because I'm super into ops. And I mean, you've got community engagement specialists, community content creators. I mean, Noele can speak more to all of this. But I think that it also, the fact that we have all of these different roles speaks to the fact that what a community manager does is also really different anywhere that you go. And so, you know, you'll have some standard things like content creation, like engagement initiatives, but all of the specifics really vary depending on what the goals are of your business and what the goals are of the community itself.
Yeah, for sure. And all of the things that you mentioned, like content, engagement, research, collaboration, and there's one other bucket that I always think about. Yeah, operations and strategy. I think that depending on how mature an organization is and how much they've invested in community for how long they've been doing it, you'll either see like one individual contributor that's splitting their time between those different buckets. And that to me was like really exciting for my career because I am the type of person who's like very bored by monotonous workflows. I like to like jump around to a few different things. And then in more like mature organizations that have invested for longer, they'll tend to kind of start to specialize on the things that they're getting the most impact out of.
And what does that career path look like? Is that something that, you know, again, being new, you know, you see growth in, and what does like that growth within an organization look like?
Yeah, you know, up until the past few years, there really hasn't been career growth available. You know, you get hired as a community manager or you're doing something else at your organization and they say, okay, you're a community manager now. And then you go, what does that actually mean? What are my responsibilities? But I mean, now you're seeing more entry-level positions that are more community associate level. Then you have your standard community manager. Then you can kind of go and branch out, like Noele was saying. And then you're starting to see more and more executive and leadership positions become available. So, you know, you'll have directors, VPs. There are more and more chief community officers that are popping up, which is awesome because I think it's really important that community has that voice at that level within any organization.
And Alex, I think that your career is a good example of this. Because Alex has kind of leveled up through to chief community officer, and there are like more and more people that are paving the way for that career path.
Yeah. And I think that with my own career path, it has not been linear at all. It has kind of been all over the place. And I think that is a product of the time and of my personal interests. But there was definitely kind of that general path through community of where I was first a volunteer moderator, and then I was, I forget what it was called, it was like community outreach manager, where I had very few actual responsibilities, but was still technically doing community management. And then I was a community manager, and then I was head of community, and then head of community and chief community officer. And so you can definitely see that progression, but I think it's going to get more nuanced and actually be a true progression that you could go through at one organization rather than bouncing around like I did.
Yeah, I love to see all the new titles popping up. And, you know, as someone really passionate in this field, I do search around and it's really cool to see the growth. And, you know, on that note, and we talked about this just like very briefly at the beginning, but it's a career that comes with or that a person in this career needs many skills. So I'd love to dive into, you know, what are some of those transferable skills? that one might have that could be viewed as relevant when applying to community roles. And especially thinking about the theme of this whole summit being about returning to the workforce. I see this field being one of the most transferable into with a lot of other roles. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think that community is like almost above all else, it's like a really suited to a generalist mindset. And I know there's been a lot of like talk that I see on Twitter lately too, that's like, we shouldn't like leave generalists behind out of specialists. You know, some people, it's just your way that you like to work, to have your, you know, feet in many different places and get to work on lots of different things. And I think that can often be the case, especially when you're starting your first role in community, because like I said, you'll be managing like engagement and moderation. And then on the other side, kind of seeing the overview of the community strategy and working with other team members. So it can be quite like varied and exciting. And then I guess the double-edged sword to that is that, and then another skill that you need is project management, to be able to kind of take that workload and make it successful. And then some of the other like easy things to check off that I think go in a lot of jobs, but particularly community management, is like communication, being able to kind of get your feet into a new piece of technology and learn it relatively quickly, or like being able to Google around until you can learn it, and being good at puns. We notice that a lot of community managers like puns. So
it's true. Or be good at making memes if you aren't a punny person.
That's true. And one thing I always like to get on my high horse about with community management too is like, a lot of people think of community managers as like they're people person or they're super social butterfly. And I think Alex would agree as well. Like a ton of the best community managers that I know are not like that at all. Like they're able to bring that empathy and that kind of desire to bring people together to their work, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're extroverted or that you're bubbly. It's not like a personality type as much as a skill set.
Yeah, big time introvert over here, but I really enjoy connecting people, especially in the online world.
And what about some of the industries? Because I think that's also, a big thing when people are returning to work or looking to make a switch. People get very hung up in, well, I've worked in, the IT industry for 20, 30 years. What are there opportunities, in the same realm, or how do I make my industry skills transferable? What are some of the industries that you see, the most community opportunities popping up in, or is it really varied?
I think it varies a lot. And I think that when it comes to backgrounds, it doesn't really matter. Like if you, let me back it up. But I think, more specifically, if you are in IT or development, there are absolutely plenty of opportunities in community, and even more, by the day. There's kind of a subsect of community management that's called developer relations that really caters towards that developer community. So it's usually more technical. There's usually a little bit different types of engagement that you're doing. And, if you have been in development, you will probably get it, and it'll be much easier for you to pursue that particular path right off the bat. I think that customer support, customer success, even honestly like sales and account management to a certain degree are all also great to transition from. I think that the skills that you develop and are required for those particular roles are very applicable to community management. It's just how you speak about yourself in resumes and interviews, and figuring out how to cater that experience to what you were looking to do at that new position.
Yeah, I think usually niche knowledge, it can be an advantage for you if you want to choose something that's aligned with your expertise, but it's rarely a limitation. Like it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be a part of the niche that you're managing a community for, with some big exceptions. Like I wouldn't probably sign up for a job managing a community of lawyers because I know nothing about like legalese, but you get the picture.
But I think to your point, that exists.
Yeah.
So thinking about transferable skills, if you have a law degree and you worked as a lawyer, but don't want to be a lawyer anymore, there are communities of lawyers out there that need community managers. So
absolutely.
I love that. And actually getting some really good questions in the chat that I want to kind of tackle here. Anuradha wants to know, could we hear about some of the companies that are really epitomizing how to build out a community management function? I love this question.
Do you want me to go first? Oh, go ahead.
You can go ahead. No, go ahead, Noelle.
One that I always look to as an exemplar, just because they have a really built out team, is Atlassian. They run a community that's kind of a combination of a product community for people that use their suite of tools, which includes like Trello and Jira. They have a ton of different tools, but they've also done a good job of folding in like the human element. It's not, simply a support community. It has a ton of other elements in it as well. And they have quite a scaled out community team. So it's something I always look toward. And then any organization that Holly Firestone has been a part of.
I was going to say Salesforce too.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a good time to kind of plug the community club, which I know y'all are also running, because I'm getting a lot of questions that I know y'all talk about like every single day. So maybe you want to talk briefly about that.
Sure. So the community club is our community of interest that is backed by Commsor. And so rather than having a dedicated product community right now, we have one that's just, people who are interested in community management, community building, networking with other people, learning, all that good stuff. We have a few different places where people can connect and be part of that community. So if you are interested, you should check out the.community.club after this and join that community space so that you can kind of poke around and see what people are talking about and the kind of things that community managers and community professionals are dealing with and running into.
Love it. Shameless plug, right natural in the middle. I love this other question from Anna, and there's so many questions coming in, so I'm going to try and get to as many of these in the next 4 minutes that we can. But she wants to know, can you describe a specific initiative that you have worked on that illustrates, what someone in this position would do?
Yes. So one of my biggest projects in my last role was moving our community that lived on Facebook groups onto a private network that was just for members. And one of the initiatives that I worked on was building out a community program where people were grouped into kind of different tiers based on their experience level with the topic at hand, which in this case was entrepreneurship. And one of the programs that I built for the most experienced tier was like a curated networking program. So I would have people apply and talk about what they wanted to kind of learn and connect with one another. And then I would actually make like curated warm introductions between community members and be like, hey, like Lauren, you're interested in XYZ. Alex also wants to learn about that. Why don't you guys set up some time to talk? So it's a lot of stuff of that nature.
Alex, was there anything you wanted to add?
I guess, one of the projects that I'm working on currently is a mentorship program. And so whether it's mentorship or super users or whatever, there are going to be these kind of within your community groups that have some kind of special programming dedicated to them. And so, that looks like figuring out who the members are, what the goal of this program is, what they can expect from it, any kind of framework that you need for them to follow and that they need to actually understand what's going on, expectations of what is happening, and then any kind of additional things that they get for being part of that. So that kind of is applicable to a bunch of different things that you might be building out within your community space.
so important and so exciting to hear about all the initiatives. Which kind of brings us to the last thing that I want to talk about. I'm seeing the clock. We have 2 minutes left, but your company, so Commsor, just recently launched a program to help train those interested in launching their career in community. So I know the first cohort started a few weeks ago, so we did miss the signups for that. But can you tell us a little more about the program and how those watching this conversation can get involved?
Yeah, for sure. So the program that we launched is called C-School, and it's a cohort-based course that runs over the course of 12 weeks, and it's intended to help people build the skills that they need to get their first job in community management. The kind of 2/3 of the program, I'd say, is focused on actually like explicitly teaching skills that community managers need. So some of those transferable skills we talked about, putting those into the context of what community managers do day to day. And then the last part of the program is focused on helping folks get a job. And you also asked how they can find out more about this. I'll pop a link into the chat, and there's like a wait list you can join if you want us to let you know when we open apps.
Yes. Anything else you would like to add, Alex?
Nope. I think Noelle did a great job at summarizing that.
Well, this has been fantastic. I am seeing lots of comments about people or from people who had never heard of community roles, and now we're going to investigate. So as Noelle just said, we're going to drop the link to the waiting list in the chat so y'all can sign up and learn more about Commsor, about the community club, about the incredible Alex and Noelle. They're both fantastic and have so much information to share. But thank you both so much for being here. It's been my pleasure to host both of you, and I can't wait to keep working together in the future.
Thanks for having us.